Hi, guys. I hope you all had an awesome weekend. We're going to jump right back into Museum Mysteries, the case of the stolen sculpture. And today we're going to actually be combining chapter 6 and 7 because chapter 6 was a little short. But since we had a long weekend, I know sometimes we can forget what was going on. So I did want to just kind of do like a little recap and just remind you of some things that happened in chapter 5 before we jump in. So if you remember in chapter 5, Clementine and the crew were doing a little bit more of their investigating. They went to the security office and got to take a look at the cameras and talk to Judy and some other volunteers at the museum to get some more information. So I just wanted to take you back to this was the last page of chapter 5, and Clementine meets Mrs. Malinowski, and she is one of the volunteers that happens to mention that she was there the same day that they believe that the statue went missing. And she mentions that she saw somebody that looked a little sneaky. So I'm going to give you a minute to think of who that was. So if you remember, it was Ruthie. Her name was Ruthie Rothschild, and they actually describe her as a troublemaker. She said that she saw some of her friends there and they were kind of being sneaky and things like that. They were snickering and whispering. So I just wanted to think about that part of chapter 5 before we jump into chapters 6 and 7. So here we go. So I keep jumping back and forth into presentation mode and the other mode. So it's taking a little bit of time, but I want it to fill the whole screen. So this is chapter 6, a new lead. I don't remember seeing Ruthie while I was here, Clementine said. I don't want to see her. Are we going to have to see her? One thing at a time, Amal said, as the four friends crossed the lobby and headed toward Mr. Carbone's office again. We're investigating the lady with the box. She's our best lead. If we can track her down, Wilson pointed out, she could be 10 time zones away from here by now. When the kid stepped into Mr. Carbone's office, he was on the phone with his back to the door. Yes, he whispered. I understand. It'll be fine. I have to go. Mr. Carbony turned to hang up the phone and saw the four kids standing in the doorway. Oh, hi, he said quickly, bringing a big, bright smile to his face. What can I do for you kids? Who are you talking to just now? Raining asked. What? Mr. Carbony said. Oh, that was nothing. A personal call. You caught me making personal calls at work. Shame on me, he laughed nervously. We wanted to ask you about one of the museum volunteers, Mr. Carbony, Clementine said. Mr. Saunders, is he working today? Yes, I believe he's in the Dutch Masters exhibit this morning, said Mr. Carbony as he spread his arms and shuffled the kids back out of the office. Now, if you don't mind, I have a lot of work to do. One more thing, Wilson said, spinning and ducking under Mr. Carbony's arm to face him. The insurance payment. Which agent signed off on it? What? Mr. Carbony said. What kind of question is that for an 8-year-old to ask? I'm 10, Wilson said. Mr. Carbony sighed and rolled his eyes. Preston, he told them. I think his name was Gary Preston. Thanks, Wilson said. He ducked out of the door and pulled it closed behind him. Then he turned to his friends. You three find Saunders. Clementine, can I borrow your phone? I have to make some calls. So, I don't know about you, but I think that Mr. Carbony is looking pretty guilty with the way he's acting, but we also hear of a new character that we're going to be introduced to. We'll see if we meet him in chapter 7. If not, we'll meet him a little later. So they talked about Mr. Carbony, they talked a little bit about Ruthie and Gary Preston. Chapter 7, Getting Answers. Clementine, Amal, and Raining left Wilson near the front desk and headed up to the second floor Dutch Masters Hall to find Mr. Saunders. Is he going to be okay by himself? Amal asked. Of the four friends, she was newest to Capital City. She'd only known Wilson for a few months. Of course, Clementine said. Wilson is one of the most capable people I know. Raining grinned. He takes care of me and Clementine more than we can take care of him, he said with a chuckle. The Dutch Masters exhibit took up nearly the whole back half of the museum's second floor. The hall displayed a collection of paintings by Rembrandt, Vermeer, Hals, Steen, and several others who'd painted in the Netherlands in the 17th century. When the three friends reached the top of the main staircase, wide open and gleaming white, framed with panes of curved glass, they stopped and gasped. There in plain sight was Ruthie Rothschild. stalking around the gallery like a thief. At least that's how Clementine saw her. Of course, she didn't like Ruthie at all. And considering the fact that Clementine liked nearly everyone she'd ever met, that was saying something. It wasn't that Clementine didn't have a reason. The two girls had known each other almost their entire lives, and Ruthie had been cruel to Clementine since day one. But thanks to her three new friends, Clementine was getting better at standing up for herself. I'll handle this, Clementine said. She strode up to Ruthie, who was crouching behind the white pillar, holding up an ivory statue by Artis Quilinius, and cleared her throat loudly. Ahem. Ruthie turned and stood up straight, her eyebrows high, like she wasn't impressed at all. What do you want? She said. Why are you sneaking around up here? Clementine asked. She tried to blow the hair that had fallen over her eyes out of her face, but it didn't work, and she just looked silly. What are you, a security guard? Ruthie snapped. I can do what I want. Were you in the museum yesterday? Clementine pressed. She didn't usually do this type of questioning, but she was determined to get answers. Me? Ruthie said with a smirk. Nah, I was on Uranus. Suddenly, someone shouted from deeper in the gallery, Owie! Ow, ow! Came the deafening screech. Clementine peered past the pedestal and saw Mr. Saunders standing in the hall, looking at the seat of the bench behind him and rubbing his butt. Oh, man, Ruthie said. She gave Clementine a little shove. You made me miss it. All that waiting, and you blew it for me. Figures. Blew what? Clementine said. You ninny. Ruthie crossed her arms over her chest. It made her look very tough indeed. I put a couple of tacks on Old Man Saunders' favorite bench so I could watch him scream his head off when he sat on them. And you made me miss it. That's awful, Clementine said, thinking she better go see if Mr. Saunders was okay. Sure is, said Ruthie. You should be apologizing right now. Me? Clementine said. Ruthie rolled her eyes. Yeah, to me, she snapped. Ugh, whatever. You're wasting my time, and I want some lunch. See ya. She started to walk off toward the stairs, but then stopped and turned. Oh, and nice job finally washing your face. It looked pretty silly with colored pencils smeared all over it yesterday. My friends and I had a good laugh. With that, Ruthie shoved past Raining and Amal and went downstairs. They could hear her cackling the whole way. Ooh, that Ruthie. I can see now why Clementine didn't really like her. So, your job, I'm going to skip past this for a second, is on this page. So it says character traits. Remember that analyzing a character can help us to determine what kind of person they are and also what they're capable of. Write down a character trait of each character and specific text evidence that supports it. Your evidence can be something the person does or says. So you have to think of some character traits. I wrote down a character trait, but definitely use more than one if you think you can. What character traits would you use to describe Mr. Carboy? And then what text evidence supports this? So go back into the book, talk about certain things that he does, what he says, how he's acting that describes that trait that you chose. And then you're going to do the same thing for Ruthie. How would you describe her? And then what does she do or what does she say that supports this? So now I'm going to go back to that one that I skipped. This is actually the example for how to do that page. So the same directions, except I just used Judy as an example. If you remember, Judy was the security guard. So let me just X out of this so that I can type. So it says, what character traits would you use to describe Judy? So I'm thinking of Judy in chapter 5. And if you remember, when the kids first went to the security room, she was really upset. They could see it on her face. She was really disappointed in herself that there was a theft on her shift. So I might say that she is hardworking. She's caring because she cares about her job and doing it well. So then if I was trying to think of text evidence that supports this, I'm going to think of specific things that she says or does that goes along with it. So if you were going to use bullets like I am, if you click these three little dots, it's the little word more comes up and it will give you some more options. This is the one for the bullets. That's what I like to use. So I'm trying to think of what happened in the story that shows that she's hardworking. She was really upset might be more with caring. She was really upset that someone stole a statue and she was on duty. And then maybe for hardworking, I could say, because I remember she said that they'd already gone through all the footage. Say she and the other security guards looked through all of the footage. So those are just a couple of examples. So here are my character traits. These are things that actually happen in the text. I could go back, and you could go back too, and find chapter 5 and see where she does exactly this. So remember that this is my example. I'll leave that just like that so you have it to refer back to tomorrow. But I'm going to actually just kind of highlight that these are going to be different people you're focusing on. I'm going to change the color so it stands out a little bit. How about red and purple? So for one, you're describing the character traits of Mr. Carbony. The other one, you're describing the character traits of Ruthie. She should be very easy. And there should be tons of text evidence that support this. I would say at least 3 different things for each of them should be easy enough for you to find in this chapter. Okay, so that's your job for Reader's Workshop. Again, since it's Monday, I'm going to have you start with the how did you spend your weekend writing. It's just a little fun write for you to share about what you did, and I shared a little bit about mine. And if you remember on page 2, these list a lot of the things that you should have in your writing. So please do your best to try and include vocabulary words, some type of figurative language, some dialogue. I said you could add a picture. In mine, I'll have you read it, but I wrote about a nature hike that my family went on. And like usual, I try to highlight the different things that I use. So here's my dialogue. I added an actual picture that I took that day of Mr. Gray, Caden, and Brutus. Here's my vocabulary word, and then some of my figurative language. I used a metaphor here. So do your best to add all of those awesome things to your stories. Remember, it makes your stories and your writing come to life. I needed 2 pages today, so sometimes that might happen. If you need to add on, you definitely can. I just started you off with a title as a reminder. Don't forget to write your title here. And then sometimes I've had kids say that they were having trouble writing. If you don't see a text box come up, you can always come up to this little T with the squares around it. If you click on it and then click where you would like to write and just drag, that's how you'll get your text box, and then you can write right in there. Okay? The last thing is our Dojo Point winners. So let's start with our ELA class. This is for Miss Golden's homeroom. Let me just do a quick little scan. And it looks like Nevaeh G, awesome job with the most Dojo points for Miss Golden's homeroom. Josh C, awesome job with 35. And Annie, 31. So the 3 of you have a homework pass, or a classwork pass, I guess I should say, for this week. So you can use it for either a reading or a writing assignment. It's your choice. Okay? If you do use it for a reading assignment, please still listen to the story just so you know what's going on, but you don't have to do the work. And then if you are using a pass, just put in the comment stream, or even when you click turn in. Actually, I think I like that better. When you click turn in, just drop me a note in the chat that just says you're using your homework pass. That's what some of the other kids have done, and that worked out really well. For homeroom, let's see, my homeroom. Ooh, a tie between Milani and Nevaeh V. Awesome job, ladies. 1, 2, 3. And then Hannah with 29. Nice job. 3 ladies in that group. So keep up the great work. Remember that the top 3 have a classwork pass. We're always looking for our next Evergreen Scholar. And we're also looking for our next pizza lunch winner. And remember that those are given to you by your 4th grade teachers. They ask us, they ask Miss Golden and I, who really stood out and who we think is ready for 4th grade. And then they're the ones that are supplying the pizza for you and your family. So I think it's a really great idea to really impress them now, because they're going to be your teachers in September. Okay? I can't wait to see your work. Please continue to put forth tons of effort into everything you do. We're watching and we're impressed.